We say we want music education for all students, but how do we actually reach all students? Our guest today, Dr. Shane Colquhoun, shares how we can take steps towards a more student-centered approach in music education.
Welcome to Pass the Baton, Empowering Students in Music Education. Here, we amplify the voices of music teachers around the world who are passing the baton and creating environments where the music students are empowered. Together, we can help students transform from passive consumers to vibrant creatives. Welcome back to the Pass the Baton podcast. I'm Kathryn Finch.
And I'm Theresa Hoover. We're so excited to be here.
Yeah.
So, Kathryn, I have to admit something. I was a little tired when we started today because we just went back to school and it's early in the morning. And 30 seconds into the interview, I was immediately energized and excited and awake and just so inspired by our guest today. How about you?
Yeah, same. I mean, Shane Colquhoun is so fun to talk to, and it had such great ideas, and so it was really, really fun to talk to him.
Yeah, and I like how he emphasized that music education is not bad. It's just that there's more that we can do, and there are more students that we can reach. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways from today's episode for me.
So much. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So before we get to the interview, we want to remind everyone that there are show notes below the podcast or, below the video in the podcast player where, we have some important Pass the Baton links, but also any of the things that Shane mentioned, you can find there linked as well. So be sure to check out those show notes. And while you're at it, if you wouldn't mind showing Pass the Baton some love, you could subscribe, follow us, leave a review. That's the kind of thing that really helps get new listeners and to really just get this important message out there.
Yeah. And while we're talking about support for Pass the Baton, we have a new site that we just launched, Buy Me a Coffee, where less than a cup of coffee, you can send us some support, which really helps, like we said before, pass the baton.
Yeah. And one more thing to let you know about is we also have a SpeakPipe up. SpeakPipe is a place where you can go and leave us a voice message. What we want to know is, how are you passing the baton, right? You hear what we're doing, you hear what our amazing guests are doing, but we know that people listening are also doing some pretty incredible things in their classroom. So if you look below again in those show notes, we have a link to the SpeakPipe. Tell us what you're up to in your classroom. Tell us how you're passing the baton, and you might just get to hear your message shared on a future episode. Okay, welcome back. We are excited to be joined today by Dr. Shane Colquhoun. Shane, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Of course, I've kind of seen your work, and then I was lucky enough to see you present for the FABS conference back in August. So we're like, we have to have Shane. This has to happen.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, would you take a moment to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about your background and what you're doing?
Good. I am Dr. Shane Colquhoun. I am the assistant professor of music technology and contemporary music styles at Alabama State University. I'm in my second year. Before then, I was at a small rural high school right outside of Auburn. I was there for 14 years. We built the program, won a couple Teacher of the Year awards, that kind of thing. I'm a percussionist by training. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, did my high school and middle school in Orlando, Florida, and did my undergrad at Bethune-Cookman University. So I have a background in production, band director chops, obviously, and what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So a lot of different areas, a lot of different experiences. That's really neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, today we're having this conversation because of your presentation at FABS, the F Flat conference, which, as I said, was fantastic. And during that presentation, you talked about how, we want music education for all, but you kind of challenged people to think about that phrase differently. Can you tell us more about what that's all about?
Because I think we say music education for all. And deep down, we honestly mean that we want to teach music. Why would we go through what we go through and not teach music? But I don't think we create enough pathways for the all. I think we make a lot of room for the ones that have the same interests as us. If they can play that clarinet really well or they know all their scales, come on. But if they are jamming Bruno Mars on the acoustic guitar, they don't necessarily have a place in most programs. And that's why I just really question it. And for me, it's I ask the question because I don't think a lot of people really think of it, to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those things that I think it just gets lost in the verbiage and we say it, but there's actually no action behind it.
Yeah. It's funny. So our school year just started and I'm teaching a class that you'll probably appreciate. It's called The Art of Teaching Contemporary Musicians.
Oh,
and
excellent.
Yeah. And it has a lot of so the first day of class, I'm talking to the undergrads and, these future music teachers. And I'm saying, like, let's think about who's in these programs. And let's think about who's not in these programs. And their wheels start turning. I'm like, do you think there's anybody who's not in the high school, band, orchestra, chorus that likes music and they're nodding their heads? Like, you think there's any of them who enjoy making music? And they're like, oh yeah, because they're realizing exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. And I had to write that down, The Art of Teaching Contemporary Musicians.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming this is undergrad pre-service teachers?
Yep. Undergrad music education majors, either junior or senior year. And it's geared towards like secondary general music / music technology and things like that.
Excellent. Yeah. So and unfortunately what ends up happening is in the academy, we ended up teaching them the opposite. And then when they get the contemporary in said general music class, we still just trying to pull them back over here. Like, come on, let's just do the music history. Let's, yeah, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. And I have to do it because this is not for me, an and or. This is not an and, but excuse me, this is not an or. This or this. This is an and.
Yeah.
Like, I believe that this all, and it goes back to the phrase, what do we mean by music education for all?
Right.
Yeah.
You're not saying no band, orchestra, chorus. You're just
no
saying,
band at all. It's giving me everything I have.
What else?
Without David Minuski in high school band, not sure I would have made it out of high school. And I say that honestly. But on the other side, I realized how much of my actual music life was hidden from what I did in school.
Yeah. All right. So we're only a couple minutes in and we're already thinking.
Yeah, I felt like I said a boatload.
This is really good.
Yeah. So I guess the question then is if I'm sure there's a lot of listeners who are like, okay, yeah, like that exposes, some of the things that we might be thinking of. Yeah, I do present things that are my interest, or I do only teach these subjects. So what do we do with that? Like, what is your work that tries to get at all?
Well, I think first it starts with an acknowledgement, like understanding the problem in and of itself. And then from there, I think it's coming up with a game plan to decide, okay, what can we do and how do we go about it? Like me and a mentee of mine was just discussing, like, where does this process begin? Do we tell elementary teachers, all right, you guys start flipping them so by the time they get to me to high school, I'm not only teaching band? Do we go all the way up to the top and start in pre-service music education training and flip them? The problem is when they get out, the stakeholders are expecting this band thing.
Yeah.
So you create, or let's just start at the high school level. Everybody, you pull your ensemble. And that's another good starting point. Starting with the kids, I can tell you a story behind that. Ask them what they want to do. You do that thing, but now you're not necessarily preparing them for the music scholarships and to be music majors. So it's layered. For me, I think the true beginning point starts with how we train our teachers and getting them to understand, number one, that musicianship isn't just reading music and recreating, because you're not really creating, you're recreating. Musicianship is not just reading music and recreating. I know plenty of musicians that don't know a flat tire from a B flat or B flat from a flat tire, but are some of the best musicians. So I think the first step is to open up our perspective of what musicianship is, and then allow ourselves to have the sticky, icky conversations everywhere else, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it does. Yeah. And I think what I heard you say was just where can I? Because
Yes,
we get so stuck in like, well, there's these traditions and I have to have this, I
I
have to
have
have
to have
that.
them.
And you do. And so, but what can you do within those things? And there is space to make a difference and to progress towards, your goal.
Something
Yeah.
without abandoning
Right.
it. And in real life, if you held on to our traditions in music education and just went after the others in a student-centered, culturally relevant way,
Hmm.
that's where the power is.
Yeah.
hey, you just
Yeah.
said another little phrase that we like: student centered.
Student-centered.
Student centered. Now we're
Yes.
really we're going into some more good stuff. So what are we talking about when we say student centered?
So I'll give you an idea. I'll tell you a story. My first time going to the Association for Popular Music Education conference was 2015 in Miami. Truth be told, at the time, I was convinced that I needed to leave the profession. I was bored. I didn't feel as though I was connecting, although I knew I was. I knew I was making a big impact. There was something that it didn't seem fulfilled to me. I wasn't fulfilled with what I was doing. So by this time, I'm 8 years in. So I come up with this wild idea that I'm going to go do a presentation on teaching about popular music producers. 2015, i.e. the book. I go and I do the presentation and had a great turnout, had a great presentation. And from there, it opened up my eyes to the possibilities, this popular music education thing, teaching informal music learning, yada, 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 yada. So I left Miami on fire. I go back and I tell my kids, we're going to start a popular music ensemble. We're going to do this. I'm going to go to pawn shops. I'm going to buy equipment. I'm going to get the whole nine. So we'd start this thing, and I made two big mistakes. The first thing is I started teaching music theory, like out the box, college level music theory. Sit down, write these chords, learn these scale degrees. These chords, you're gonna get this. Then the second big mistake I made was had this song fake book, and I went and I printed it and I gave them, and now we're gonna learn this song. So I really went back to the whole thing that we do. Had I could do it differently, but what I noticed was in between the moments when I'm out the room grabbing a quarter, I turn my back. These kids would start doing like praise and worship band because they're all from the black church, and they're nah, 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 and next they break out with a shout. And I said, imagine if I just came back and said, hey, teach me a little bit about that. Student centered. It's using the voice, hearing the voice of the students. In the presentation, I talked about, in my opinion, the 5 most important questions we could ask. And to me, number 1 is, what would you like to learn about music?
Mm-hmm.
Loaded question, scary question. We don't have the time to actually address everything in the question, but that's the starting point. Simply asking the kids, what would you like to learn? I talk a lot, I'm sorry.
No, that was great. No. And I
Yeah.
could see where your idea of starting with pre-service teachers, because we gotta get out of our own what we do, what we were taught to do, like we could try this new thing and then just make it, traditional
Yes,
with
yes,
just
and
a new
yes.
thing. Yeah. So to kind of get out of our own thinking is awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
And I appreciate you sharing that too, to say like, this is how I started, because I
Yeah,
think that's sometimes I think we're afraid, we're afraid to do something new because we might mess it up or we might do it wrong. And the fact is, like, yeah, we're probably going to do some things we would do differently the second time around, but that's part of it, right?
Yeah, we're gonna mess this up. Yeah.
And if you hadn't taken that first step, you wouldn't be where you are now, and the kids wouldn't be where they are now. So
100%.
even if the first step is messy, it's okay.
Yeah. And like, if we're not willing to be the lifelong learners, who else will be? As a teacher, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're here to do.
Yeah. And also it's kind of freeing because I'm not the the person who knows everything in the room. Because I don't. Right. So
Yes.
I'm not, and that's okay. And I
But
can learn from my students.
the problem with that is that's not what we were taught.
Totally.
It's so hard. It's so hard. Like, one of the running jokes in my conducting class, and it's so weird because I have a new group of kids and it's lasted, is that I can't spell. And I openly say it, like, listen, if y'all see something on the board, just tell me to fix it. I'm not I'm gonna mess this up. If for no other reason, I move fast, and there's sometimes I make mistakes. But a lot of people wouldn't open themselves up to that level of critique and vulnerability because we're supposed to be the masters in the room, and that's draining, guys. Sorry.
Yeah. It's too much.
Yeah,
And
it can be.
Yeah. Just, I mean, you think back to even like when we were when we were first year teachers, what we know and what we know now, and how we grow. We have to continue to model that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
All the
and
way
that's
through.
something, we talk about the pre-service teachers. I'm trying to model for them as well. Just like,
Yeah,
it's okay. That and trying to also remind them that music is fun. Sometimes
music is fun.
we have to remember that.
As fun as sometimes we don't make it.
Mhm.
And I find myself now, even we started a pop ensemble at Alabama State. And my biggest problem as an instructor from day to day is balancing my desire to sound good
Mhm.
versus making it too heavy. Oh, it's such a struggle for myself as a teacher.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So here's an impossible question. What does student-centered learning look like in a classroom? Because there's so many different music classrooms out there. But can you help us see what that might look like?
It I think if we generalize it to a thing, we then continue to make the same mistakes of this is how we do it. So I think every classroom, and I can't drive this statement home enough. Every classroom is going to look uniquely different.
Mhm.
What works for your kids may not work for my kids. How I approach my students may not work for your students. The music that we play may not work. So I think it really starts with being conversational in the classroom, asking, what it is that you would like to learn, and then kind of building it out from there. And there are going to be some limitations. Okay. One of the things that I did the first time I did this was, and I wrote in the book, I forget the name of the book, I have to find it, but it describes doing a red day, white day. So on red days, we would do traditional band literature, and we'll go through the pieces, yada yada, we'll work it. But on white days, every class will explore their own musical ideas. So I had one kid who was obsessed with piano, and they would go on YouTube and they'll have this synesthesia with the notes coming down, and that's how they will learn. Well, I found a program called Melodics, which actually has the same thing, but it actually grades you as it goes. So he would work on that. I had another group that wanted to start a band, so they would work on that. I had another kid who played drums in the church, so he would go work on that. But that knowledge of it comes from me asking the question. Now, in some class, it may be guitar. They may be all be interested in guitar. Other classes, they all may be interested in piano. Somebody's class may be interested in music production. Okay, well, we don't have enough computers. All right, do you have at least one? All right, start with a loop, drop the loop. All right, you come add your part. You come add your part. Anybody in here rap? All right, come on. You play sax? Play something other than what we've been doing. And I think, like, imagine if we were all, let's go with Arizona, because that seems the most fun place in the conversation. And we incorporated this idea of just asking the students, planning around the students in a school year. And then at the end of the school year in May, we did an in-service where us three just got together and shared what we did.
Yeah.
And then maybe we went next door to districts. They have 10 teachers. Repeat the process. See how much learning and how much pulling and how much resources just simply by asking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, the wheels are turning. I'm just, but I have to.
I come to Arizona anytime.
Woohoo! Oh, that would be fun. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute. You know, somebody's thinking this question that I'm sure you've been asked. But what about the concert?
Beautiful question.
Mm-hmm.
And beautiful question. You know the key thing or the key component to change? Change. It's going to cost us something. Now, that Red Day, White Day, for 4 consecutive years leading up to that year, we did Trills and Thrills in Atlanta, where we would go and, do the concert band thing. 4 straight years we did and got superiors. Yeah, cool. That year, in addition to the Red Day, White Day, I asked the kids, so what do y'all want to do the thing again? Or do y'all want to go to this Battle of the Bands at Alabama State? And they chose the Battle of the Bands. So now, as a band director, oh my goodness, you're not going to go get your group educated for concert band in the spring? That is insane. Did my kids enjoy what they were doing? Did they learn? Absolutely. We got to change. And I mean, it doesn't mean change all the time. Maybe we don't do the state assessment or the MPA, but every kid is required to do solo or ensemble. Mm-hmm. You don't lose your skill. Maybe we don't have the end of the year concert as is, but we do presentations of the student work, and every kid has to check off for their final learning their major scales, if that's important. I throw that out there. There's ways around it, but we just think that there's only one way to do it. I think one of the biggest crimes in music education is that in any given area, I can go to every school in the area and everybody's trying to do the same thing. Yeah. It's a crime because we're not all serving the same kids.
Yeah.
Well, and another devil's advocate too is, what about the littles? I mean, I don't know how much experience you have with elementary, but can they do it? I mean, I have opinions on that.
They can. I think because at the elementary, and now this is not to escape the foundational things of music, mm-hmm. rhythm. No, we still have to squeeze those things in. But I believe at the elementary level, it absolutely works. Yeah. Right? This summer, it was amazing to me how much modern band pedagogy and informal learning music lines up with ORF. Mm-hmm. And in the elementary school, I may not ask, what would you like to learn about music? But I may ask, what's your favorite song? Mm-hmm. Build from there. Yeah. You can talk about instrumentation, obviously steady rhythms. I mean, the list and the things are there. Not to mention all of the modern band instruments that are really applicable at that age. Mm-hmm. And teachers. So I believe it can work there as well.
Yeah. And I think it's like you said, there's some scaffolding, right? Like,
yes.
They're just because they're little. But I know, and to your point about, performances and things, we have a must that, we must have a kindergarten performance. And so our music teachers, we decided we're going to do an informance, and the parents are going to come into the classroom. Mm-hmm. And I decided I'm going to ask the kids, what do we want to share with our parents? It must show our steady beat. It must show our singing voice. It must show. And we just brainstormed activities, and I sorted them, and the kids came up with their own performance, and it was different for every class because every class had different interests. But I'm telling you, again, that was a shift. But I had parents, like one grandparent who was I think she was a special ed teacher when she was teaching. And she's like, I get it. Those kids were so enthused and so into it, and they did it, and they were kindergarten, Yeah. So of course I wasn't just like, friends, what are we going to do? It was like a lot of
No,
scaffolding.
yes, and I want to be clear, music educator friends who are probably mad at me right now. This is a lot of work, and and I know it's a lot of work, and the older I get, is the more that I'm an advocate of work-life balance and making sure you take care of family and you do your stuff. But uh, somewhere up there, creativity and student voice is, if health, family is 1 and 2, it's like 2.5 AD. You know what I mean? To really address these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so neat to think about. And part of me was wondering in some ways if it almost might even be easier with the littles because there aren't as many expectations. And even with the kids themselves, like they don't, I feel like by the time they get to high school, they know what band is, especially, the ones who are in band. This is what band is supposed to be. They've already put the box around it. So doing things, like Kathryn's explaining, like that kind of just opens the door to continue asking those questions as they grow older.
Yeah. And it shifts. So if we say pre-service music education is the spot where we start, I guess the next place would be elementary.
Yeah.
Because it has the least amount of consequences if they get to the middle school.
Right.
And they don't offer these ideas, and it's right back to the band stuff that we do. I mean, it's we got to cycle it somewhere.
Yeah.
We got to cycle it somewhere.
And we can all start making changes and start making shifts.
Yes.
But no, I would agree that like with the pre-service is a great place to really emphasize it, just so that they'll come out into the profession with ideas that things can be different. They can,
absolutely,
and that they need to be in order to meet the needs of the kids in front of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so many things. Okay, so let's see. If somebody's listening and they're like, "All right, I need to do something different tomorrow." What's like a little first step someone could take?
I would say go do some research. Read. See what's out there. Some of my favorite resources. Look up Lucy Green, Informal Music Learning. And if you just take the 5 principles of informal music learning and just look at it in its context, you don't have to know anything about the project or the process. Just look at it and see how much different it is to how we approach music education. Yeah. I would recommend checking out Clint Randall's Music Teacher as a Producer. I would recommend Steve Holly, Coaching a Popular Music Ensemble. I would recommend Shane Calhoun, Producers of Pop.
Excellent. We'll make sure we definitely link that one.
Because it opens up ideas. Passing the baton.
Yeah.
Dig into the resources, because I think sometimes I had a conversation with a friend, a former undergrad student that did some practicum stuff with, and he had these ideas, and he was like, I just want to do it. I think I just want to start like a corporate band. And he, in his brain, right, he was saying it as if he was coming up with something new. And I was like, no, dude, do this, check this, check this, check this. And he was like, so people are doing this? Yeah. It's just, it's hidden. So I would say do some research. Another thing I was just thinking about, there's another resource that I was thinking about. Music Whip, formerly known as Little Kids Rock. Just go to the webpage. Check out their Jam Zone site. Read music as a second language. And of course, I might be missing something and some resources that are outstanding, but these are just kind of like my go-tos. And once you begin to just dabble into the world and see, I really think it starts with asking the question, seriously, what would you like to learn? Like, I just think because the power of the question and the direction that question is going to take you in would be, it's going to open your eyes to another thing. Another option would be maybe making a list of things that you would be interested in teaching. Would you like to learn about the Billboard chart? Would you like to learn about music business jobs? Would you like to start a piano ensemble? Would you like to start a guitar ensemble? And then give the survey to the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Other. Put an other line in there if you don't want to ask that question. So present things that you may be comfortable with teaching, or you may have the resources, because what you may think is uncool may be cool, and what you think may be cool may be very uncool. But again, it goes back to starting and asking with the kids. Or another wild idea I used to do is second day or so, I used to print a picture of an iPod, and I used to say, give me 3 songs that are on your playlist right now. Every class I ever did, college all the way down to elementary. Go listen to the music. Let's talk about this. Let's learn about our students.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we haven't asked you that we should be asking you? There's so much good stuff going on.
I mean, I could go through the questions. I can't think of anything. I just, I guess I just want to say that what we're doing is not bad.
Yeah.
But I would just ask the question, are we meeting the expectation of all?
Yep.
And we're not trying to give you more work, but we are. and we're just challenging. And when I say we're challenging all of us, because this is when I say it's a very uncomfortable place for me myself, that we're just challenging us to challenge our own thinking. Yep. And to think about that there are kids in your classroom that are making music without you. And they can continue to make music without you, or you can make music with them and ultimately learn more about them and learn about yourself if we open the door.
Yeah. And I think when you say, research and whatever, whether that's podcasts or books or whatever that is, like it's just like baby steps every day, right? It's like me leaving a message for Theresa, like, today I think I'm going to do this, but I'm really worried about it. What do you think? It's just pushing yourself forward with those conversations, reading books and knowing someone else has talked about this or even done research about it. And, you're not the only one, and you're inching forward, right?
Inching forward. And on the other side, for us, people that are doing the work and are hip to these ideas, telling others, but also realizing, and I wrote this down, I'm not going to tell you weird, but I wrote this down somewhere the other day, where we're very still much so the misfits of the field. Like, what are you doing? Like, are you serious? You're going to do what to do what? So understanding that our ideas and our thoughts, although very important, are not exactly mainstream, and that we have to realize that we're still very much so climbing, and it's taking a step. This is a marathon. So we are maybe 10 to 20 years away from what this can actually be, and understanding that we're at the beginning of this. It's way better than it was in the 1990s, but we're still very much so at the beginning. We're coming of age still. So approaching it as such.
Yeah. Without these little steps now, we're not gonna
get there.
Yeah. And I also appreciate that you said what we're doing is not bad, right? Music education isn't bad.
No.
But it can be better.
It can. And I mean, I will say this may be a little boring, which is good. As I said, it doesn't. And I mean, it's not, if we're being 100% honest with ourselves. Are our students truly engaged, or are our students just being obedient and doing what we're asked? If we just break them down into groups, you'll have the student that really is into what we're doing, and they're all in, all stake, first share, so on and so forth. Then you got the other kid who just really likes music, and they're going to do whatever they can. Then you got the kid might be there because mom, dad makes them be there. Then you got the kid that doesn't like anything you do, but they actually like you as the educator. A lot of those, So I think with being student-centered, we get to flip that on its head a little bit, where they're there for the sake of the music that you're bringing to them is of value to them.
I love it. So kind of going back to the research thing, this next question is, it's a little selfish because it has to do with my research.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do the nerdy stuff. So one of the things that, Kathryn and I often talk about empowerment. So I've been really digging into that word in music education research, and I'm realizing that it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So what does student empowerment mean to you as a music educator?
For me, empowerment
Yeah.
means the ability or the skills for that student to make music with or without you. Like, how many times, imagine, like I said, if I could get $20 for every time somebody asks me how to say my name. I wish I could get 50 for every time somebody says, man, I used to play the clarinet. And like the other part of one of our missions, at least what I was told in undergrad, music education for all and lifelong musicians. Are we really creating lifelong musicians? So for me, the empowerment piece is that I can educate a child enough to whereas when they leave my classroom, they have the desire and the skills to continue to make music, whether it's for leisure or sometimes even professionally to earn money, and continue to do it without me for their life. And now that I'm saying this, I am very depressed. I have failed miserably at that. Very few. I'm not going to ask anybody how they've done with that, but me personally, being transparent, that hasn't happened.
Yeah, it will down the road, like you said.
Yeah, we're getting there.
How does that sound? Does that line up with the literature?
In a lot of ways, yes. Again, different people have different ways of saying it, but the idea that it's something that it's important to the students, that they can carry with them, that they can do without us. The thing that I've been really stuck on recently is this idea that we cannot empower our students, but we can create an environment for them to be empowered. Meaning we can't do it to them. Because if something, or, we can't give them ownership, because if we give ownership, then we could also take it away. And then it's not truly ownership. This is the stuff that keeps me up at night these days.
That's interesting, because I heard a very similar concept in terms of purpose and wealth, or chasing dreams. That was what it was. Because if you're chasing something, it's essentially running from you, in a lot of ways. So that's very interesting. I tell you what, smart people, boy, we come up with some stuff.
Yeah. Oh, the things that we think about when we have too much time and PhD programs.
Yes. Do I have a second to grab something? I have another resource I wanted to share.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
And this one is a little bit more action-based pedagogies and popular music education is another good resource. And I believe this is where I wrote the chapter about the Red Day, White Day project is specifically in here.
Awesome.
And then Places and Purposes of Popular Music Education. It's by the editors are Gareth and Brian Powell. There's another good resource with a ton. Now, here's the tricky thing, and you had asked me earlier. Being mindful, like what I'm finding is, and I haven't decided how bad I want to fight this yet, is in my state, I'm becoming known as the popular music guy. And it's because of my affiliation with Music Will, APME, and I'm all about popular music. Okay, love it. But I'm a lot more what works for the kids guy than I am any particular idiot. So it could be a bunch of different things, guys. Mariachi, excuse me, steel pan, whatever. It's not one answer. Mm-hmm. And that's what I kind of am afraid of, that as we go, we're going to latch onto one thing. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be that for a little bit. And hey, I have a pop ensemble, so I'm student centered. Okay.
Yeah.
But I
No.
make them learn theory first, and then I tell them what they're going to.
With
Don't
sheet
talk
music.
about me in front of the people, okay?
Yeah, and I say that because I've done all those things too. All those
Right.
You've done
things.
the thing.
Right.
Maybe
Right.
not pop music, but put in substitute ukulele or whatever you want to say, and
Yes.
I've done it.
And then just do it. But that's
Recorder.
what we do.
Yeah.
That's what we do. That's 100% what we do. And I would much rather try than not.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. Taking a step is better than staying where you are. Yeah.
Yep.
And I like that. It's what works for the kids. It's not necessarily popular music. And here, and where I am in Arizona, mariachi is a big, or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's not big yet, but it's something that we're,
Yeah.
because
And
it's very relevant to our students.
very, and one of all the great things that I did at Lochapoka, one of the things that I regret the most is that somewhere around year 7 or 8, we started getting a lot of Hispanic students, and a lot of them started joining the band. So we had about a span where close to 40% of the band was Hispanic, and they were awesome, and they totally bought into the show style, Florida A&M, Alabama State Marching Band style.
Yeah.
But I never reached over the line to go get them. And there was one young lady. She's maybe 5'2". Just was just a fun student. Played saxophone. Come to find out, she plays tuba with her family at home. And I never took the time to, and you know what I'm saying? And that, I miss that. And how many, we're all missing these things where we could just be doing things and we just never asked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dana, Ruben, Maria, I'm sorry guys. Love y'all. I owe you. Evelyn.
Yeah.
Hopefully
I
they're
know
still out
people.
there making music.
Yeah. I know people are going to want to find out more about you and connect with you and see what you're doing. So, do you mind sharing with us that information?
Yes, absolutely. I just recently launched a blog, so it's www.musicedblog.com. I'm trying to be more consistent with that. My email address, colquhoun.shade@gmail. I'm sure we can tag and link. And then also, if you could check out my book at F Flat Books, The Producers of Pop, a comprehensive plan for studying popular music producers. You mind if I tell you guys about the book?
Yes, please.
So it's a concept that I really just developed over time. And the goal of it was I wanted to study popular music producers as we would study our classical composers, Bach, Beethoven, and look at their lives, production styles as we would study. So the book is set up in a way whereas in the first chapter, I just give you the overview of the roles of a music producer. Like at the time of the writing, I was hip to 4 particular roles that the music producer can play. I figured out one after, but I'm not going to tell it maybe I'll do a second edition.
Yeah.
And I won't tell you what the 4 was because I want you to go learn. Excuse me. So that's the overview of the first chapter. Then the second chapter, I pick 4 music producers that I feel are like the poster child for music producer. And then I give you biographical information and then have like worksheet assessments. Then in the third chapter is where the magic begins to happen. I break down the different ideas and the different ways that you can make this student centered. I give you lesson ideas, and then I also incorporate cross-curricular ideas. Like, for instance, if producer A produced an album that makes $600 a month, he also works in a studio where he makes $800, but he has to send 25% to his manager. How much did producer? Stuff like that, and it just ties it all together. And then we have a producer glossary. So there is so much things that you can actually do with this 50-page resource in your class and really build it around your students. So it's on F Flat Books.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We will definitely link that. As you know, everything through F Flat Books is it's fantastic. They're doing good
Amazing.
work. They really are. Awesome. Well, we will make sure that we have all those links in there. Thank you so much. This was
Thank you.
this was such a good, just good reminders and good things to think about. And like I even I have things that I'm going to be doing in class on Monday that are a little bit different, just because,
Thank you.
it's the kind of reminder we all need. So
Yeah, and in general, I'm always up for conversations and lectures and podcasts. So if anybody has questions, please feel free to email me. I have the bandwidth to take on a couple more people where we just speak once a week. I'm with it. Whatever you need. You guys as well. Just reach out and we just keep the conversation going. That's the key to all of this. As long as everybody keeps inching, we're eventually going to get there.
You got it. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
If you liked today's episode, you will love the PassTheBatonBook.com website, where you can find free resources, coaching services, and how to support Pass the Baton. Speaking of support, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Thanks again for listening.